So the question is, what makes a good team? Well, some teams perform exceptionally well and other teams are no better than a rabble. So what is the difference between those two alternatives? Good teams usually have a diverse mix of people, a genuinely diverse mix. They're not composed of people who all think the same or all behave the same. They're composed of opposites, but somehow they manage to actually work together in the team. And if you look at musical groups, a lot of musical groups are like that. They probably couldn't live together, but they do manage to work together and they value the diversity that they bring to that. The Beatles would be a good example, and perhaps U2 would be a more modern example of that. So they have complementary talents. And my analogy for that is a jigsaw puzzle where all the pieces are actually different, but they can't operate without one another. And they do mesh in quite well together to form a complementary unit. If you're going to have diversity, there will be trouble and there will be conflict. And the team manages to manage conflict without it going too personal. You can have conflict over ideas, which is fine, and direction and what the team's trying to do. But if it goes to personality conflict, then you don't have a team anymore. Good teams manage to have arguments about what they're doing, what their purpose is, and other things, but manage not to turn it personal. And that's a real skill of teams, and importantly, it's a real skill of leaders who lead teams. Great teams usually have a leader. It doesn't have to be a solo leader who remains detached. It can be a distributed form of leadership where the team behave more like a rugby team and they work together. But there has to be someone who's going to actually call time on when a project needs to start, when it stops, when people need to get involved, when they need to be less involved. Someone has to perform those sorts of roles, and a good team has a leader or a group of leaders that perform those functions seamlessly. Finally, a good team listens in direct proportion with the number of ears they have compared to their mouths. That's a bit like musicians, where actually a good musician has their ears open as well as focusing on what they're doing. Indeed, they're emotionally literate. They are living inside their own heads, but also have an awareness about the needs of other people within the group. My analogy for good teams is that from the Beatles. And in this book, we have a whole section on how teams are formed, reach performance, and maintain that performance. And I think that's what makes a team that rocks.